What is the actual thought process going through your mind when you're setting up your camera settings for manual mode? Well, what usually works for me is setting my white balance first. And based on where I'm shooting, I try to choose the closest white balance to that situation. But what I don't typically do is set my white balance to auto. I have been burnt by that in the past, and I would rather just set it to the correct situation that I'm in. And the second step is simply deciding what's your goal of the photo. So before I touch any other settings, I decide, do I want to have a portrait with that beautiful blurry background so my subject stands apart from it? If that's the case, I like to choose aperture as my first setting. And I will usually set my aperture to anywhere between f2.8 and 5.6, depending on how many subjects that I have in front of me. And if the goal of the shot is to capture motion or blur it creatively, then shutter speed is usually the thing that I choose next. I will usually set my shutter speed to 1/200, but if my subjects are moving around a lot more, then I'll typically use a higher shutter speed than that. And the last thing that I do is I set my ISO, because if I've selected my aperture and shutter speed the way that I want it, and if I'm checking my exposure based on my exposure meter and it indicates that it's still a little bit too dark, I'm going to bump up my ISO. And I typically do start my ISO at 100 or keep it as low as possible.